Hey guys, so this is one of those videos I've got to be careful not to make it look like a hate video because it's not a hate video, but it is a video that it, something does get under my skin sometimes, and I kind of want to get it out there. Sometimes so some people out there know that I haven't got kids. Now, it wasn't really a choice I wanted to make, and without going into it, ultimately, if I could have ensured that it had a healthy upbringing and everything else, then I would have done it. I wanted kids. I've always wanted kids. So it wasn't like a choice. It wasn't like a choice that I made for any other reason than health reasons and things like that. So yeah, so it was a shitty decision to have to deal with. And also as well, I always had this thing that if I was going to have kids, whilst I knew things could never be perfect, you know, I think the time when it was most likely, there were some things that happened in my life then, and it sort of derailed it. And I don't know. It was never the right time after that. So, but do I regret it? Yeah, that's the only one thing in my life I do regret, not having kids. But because especially these days, because there's things that can make it more safe now. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is because I've done as much as I can. I did bring a girl up as a stepdad for, I think it's about, well, you say exactly how do you put a number on it? Technically, I was living there a few years, and I was seeing her all the time for about 7 years. But she calls me dad up to this day, so it's lifelong, isn't it? When you make a commitment like that. I never bring her into these conversations because I want her as far away from this shit as possible. Um, and yeah, and she's not biologically my daughter, but I loved her. I loved her completely. That's not the same as having your own kid. I've realised that people have told me that there is perhaps a feeling that's different for some people. But I can tell you, I love this kid with everything, and I used to walk her to school and go and collect her every day while her mum laid in bed. But I used to go and walk with her, and we'd spend all the time going to school and coming back, messing about like we were both children. I loved it, and I loved I loved having that in my life. But it's not the same as getting someone pregnant and having a child together. Okay, I'll concede that. Um, but I'm also not a rocket scientist, and yet we can have opinions about rockets. I'm not a football coach, but we can have opinions about football. See what I'm saying? I'm also quite good at putting myself in other people's shoes, and I've spent a lot of time around other people when they're going through it and going through the process. I've probably spent more time than a lot of others have because of the fact that I haven't had kids. So you kind of try and make up for it in other ways. You try and understand a lot more than perhaps you would have done. So it's never going to be quite the same. But as I said, this girl, I can't name, but this girl who, for me, was my daughter, except that I wouldn't overstep the line for a real dad, even though he didn't give a shit about her. But that's another story. When I say don't give a shit about her, I mean he just didn't want to contact her or anything. And she was 8 years old when I started looking after Cece, so I'd missed that first part of her life. But she was a sweetie, and I couldn't understand why anybody would sort of disown somebody so innocent. It was crazy. So yeah, she had me hooked. So if people say it's more intense than that, I believe you. I see parents and I see people before they have children, then I see them have children, and then I see the raving lunatics they are after they've had children because their child is going to be a doctor, their child swims faster than every other kid in the class, I see the bias, but it's not an annoying thing. It's cute because you realise like these people are just totally in love with their kids, and so I see it. So for as best as I can, I get it. And when I go out there and I fight, I don't necessarily think about me, but I do think about the kids coming up, the people who've got to live the life that I lived, or maybe don't have to. And so I do think about all of this stuff. For the best I can, I try and put myself in the position. Regardless of all of this, the thing that winds me up is that people will weaponize that against me all the time. To hide, by the way, intellectual laziness or incapacity to deal with the actual arguments that I make. Prominent people, to less prominent people have all tried to come up with the same angle when I've hit them with an argument that maybe is a little bit too close to home. And that is, doesn't have kids, so he doesn't understand why I would make this awful decision, or why I would make this awful moralless decision, or why I would trade all my morals for this and make it look like a hero's move. I did it for the children. You know, sociopaths will always use children or animals, the only things they can have any empathy for, but children or animals, to justify the things that they do wrong. That's a sociopath. That's how they justify a lot of what they do wrong, is by using children and animals as the justification. So, something to watch out for. So, I found that genuine open parents are actually really willing to bring me in on the experience, which is when I was in my 40s and 30s, which I found amazing. But what happens is you'll get into a debate, or you'll get into a position of making a point, and the point is good, people agree, and they feel like it deserves answer, and then the answer back is always the same, and it doesn't matter if it's in your living room, it doesn't matter if it's on the street, it doesn't matter if it's in a podcast studio. The answer's always the same. Well, you haven't had kids. And we could be talking about building a fucking snowman. We could be talking about shopping at Harrods. It doesn't matter the subject. Somehow the sentence, you haven't had kids, applies to winning in every single argument, apparently. It's intellectual laziness. I'm bored of it. And I'm just going to start saying the word CUNT to anybody that uses it as an intellectual shield in future. Because it does. Get up my nose. I've had my fucking rant. Tom Fury, Zero News, calling it a day for now.